would be some of the things for a leader that's thinking, I'm not getting through to the team like I know I could, like I'd like to, like they deserve, maybe, if they're that honest. How can people take the steps to start creating the culture that accepts differences of opinions, and then sort of broaden that out to maybe different types of employees or employee needs that we're accommodating?
Lead by example. So that congruence piece for me is always a big one. You have leaders saying one thing and doing something different, and then you hear the chatter with the employees going, well, he said this, but he's doing that. He's doing the opposite. So really having that congruence, knowing that almost, and I hate to liken employees to children with their parents, but they watch everything you do.
Yeah.
And so if you're not walking the talk and leading by example and having that congruence, then you cannot expect, your staff to do anything different to what you're doing. So be really mindful that you are leading the way. It doesn't matter if you're a team leader or a CEO. If you're in any type of leadership position, you're going to have one or more people looking up to you, and you want them to be role modeling those right behaviors. Psychological safety is such a big one. I've done so much work with people who have been really traumatized by their experiences in the workplace. And I've also, in the coaching space, but also do a lot of work with leaders in the consulting space around, don't make these mistakes. You don't want to have the reputation in the marketplace that you tolerate bullying, or you have a particularly toxic culture, workplace culture. And so for me, it would be, again, making sure all the leaders are on board. You're all going to have different personalities because we're unique, individuals, and we bring our own perspectives and things to the table. But making sure, if you are the CEO, there's a zero tolerance to certain behaviours. And also, what are the behaviours you want to see mirrored and people demonstrating in the workplace, especially when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion. But I think it's really explaining to them, getting the leaders, and this is something I do in the diversity, equity, inclusion space, is having the leaders at every single level think about a time when they were excluded, when they were bullied, when they were not heard. Bullying doesn't always look like we think it does. It can be very subtle, and it can be over a period of time, a long period of time. It can be subtle exclusion, or talking over somebody all the time, or somebody just not feeling heard. And they might translate that to, well, that's because I come from a different cultural background, or I have a different skin color, or I'm a woman, or whatever it might be. But I think, that there needs to be a lot of self-awareness as well. With leaders, but also with your teams. So if you're learning something about yourself as a leader, try and talk to your teams, be open with your teams about, I know that I'm not particularly good at A, B, and C, and be a little bit vulnerable. Tell your team, look, guys, I know I'm not, great in this space. I get carried away and I get excited and I run off with strategy, and, you guys might need more time, or you might need more support. And I've realized I'm not that great at it, but I need you to help me get better, and I need you to help me understand that more. Just be vulnerable as a leader. That actually works to build trust and rapport so quickly. And you would know this in your work as well. People love a leader that's a human and relatable. So there would be some of the things, and they are some of the things that I work with on leaders, because sometimes they don't even have the awareness of those basic things I've just mentioned. It sounds like common sense, but when you're tied up in not doing, just your job, and you sort of have the blinkers on day to day, you might not have that. You might not have that realization or acknowledge your own behaviors yet. So sometimes getting people to just stop for a minute, reflect, and think about their own behaviors and leadership styles, they can sort of go, oh, okay, you're holding a mirror up to them sometimes.
Yeah, that's really good. And that points back to one of the key points you mentioned right near the start about valuing people by giving them time and seeing it as an investment into the relationship. Because like a lot of the time like the C-suite particularly, there's a lot of pressure. They're carrying lots of different things. And it would be easy to embrace I haven't got time for small talk. I haven't got time for conversations. What they're really saying is, I haven't got time for the people stuff. I need to hit the targets. I need to this, and it's like, it's the people that help you get to the targets, isn't it? There's a balance to that as well. But I really like the way you've put it. The whole self-awareness aspect is huge. I remember a while back I was leading a team where I didn't know them that well. We'd not been together that long. Very high stressful scenario we had to sort of deal with for a day or two. And I literally, thankfully, I'd learned by that point and just said, when I'm constrained, I look very serious. I really enjoy what I'm doing. So if I talk to you and ask you to do something and I'm not smiling, don't take it personally. It's just, it's not reached my face yet, shall we say. But just communicating that, it stops certain things building up, or people, taking things the wrong way or whatever. And it's just like, no, I'm just focused on something that I need to do, and I don't want to tread on anyone in the process. So, bear with me with that. And that's so kind of liberating from my perspective. It doesn't give me an excuse to just go around, not smiling and not taking the time for the people aspect. But it's a step, isn't it, in helping people understand who I am, where I'm still working on certain areas, and hopefully it won't trip them up in what they need to do. Such a key thing. Yeah, I think if we can get that right balance of vulnerability over a consistent period, people get to know you, and it's like, okay, yeah, I can run with that, because I understand that deep down, he's for me. They're for me. They want my success in the process. Yeah. I think that's such a key thing. I think the whole thing about inclusion, as well as it might be sort of, people that identify as a different gender maybe, or from different background, ethnic group, however you want to kind of use that term, it's also just including people to have an input, even if they're very similar to you as well. They might not be from a completely different kind of area of society or group or people group, however you want to put it. I don't want to get in the weeds and the minefields of trying to explain it too deeply, but just everybody's different, but including them for who they are, and what the value they can bring is really good. So this is all good stuff. I knew it would. And I think it's a key thing, like you say, just check in every now and again and review where you are. It's like, because like the thing about culture is, you don't create it once and then it just carries on. You have to kind of nurture it, build it, develop it, keep it strong, don't you? And one of the ways of doing that is to consistently show up, be aware of how you're showing up, and sort of stay as consistent as you can with that. What would be some of the other things, because I get the opportunity to ask you, what are some of the other aspects of kind of strengthening that culture? So say we're in a good place for a company, we've got a good team, we've educated, we understand, we're recruiting, reaching out to lots of different ideas, different viewpoints, which we're allowing a voice at the table of discussion maybe. How do we then stop ourselves from closing everything down and going back to how we were?
I always touch.
I know.
Yeah, it is a big question. Well, it's like anybody that's, I was talking to someone yesterday and she said to me, I asked her to rate her future goals out of 10. She said 9. And I said, oh, that's great. Just out of curiosity, why didn't you do 10 out of 10? Like this is aspirational. She said, well, because I don't want to fail. Like 10 is that's almost perfectionism. And I thought, wow, talk about learned helplessness as human beings. Like we learn that, well, once you get to a 10, there's nowhere else to go but to maintain a 10, or to maintain that pinnacle of, well, we've reached our goal. What do we do now? That maintenance is just as important. And I guess it's related to your question, is not being complacent. And that's what I have seen organizations do, this huge turnaround. They finally recognize that their culture was really toxic. They're losing talent. They start to rebuild essentially. And in the meantime, their clients or their Customers have suffered, because when you have such high turnover, who suffers? Your clients, especially if you're a charity or a non-profit. The people that are most disadvantaged suffer. So I have seen a lot of companies do that, and then they reach that sort of pinnacle of, great, look where we've come. And it's like, don't forget the journey. And so I try and attach feelings to everything when it's goal oriented. It's remember the feelings of where you were. And I usually get people right at the beginning of the journey to write 3 feelings. What is the feeling now? And rate it out of 10. Whether you're an organization, whether you're an individual looking for employment, whatever your situation is. And then what your feelings will be once you've achieved that goal, and in whatever time frame. And so we do this reflection piece, and it's, you need to remember where you are now and how you're feeling, and hold on to that, because how devastating it will be if things slip backwards. But for me, it's really speaking to the leaders and telling them about that concept of complacency. So especially around psychological safety, the damage and trauma you can cause to a human being. So, and that is a genuine concern. And so when you talk to leaders, they've gone through this whole journey. Usually their emotional intelligence is much better, their self-awareness is much better, and what they don't want is to traumatize people in their workplace, because things become unstuck. And so it's putting measures in place. So governance, making sure that they've got the right governance, that they also have. If you're talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, do they have working groups? It doesn't, making sure that the whole team knows that this great journey doesn't just end here. What we do now is we have a LGBTQI a working group, and they're part of the events committee, and on certain days of the year we're going to celebrate diversity inclusion that way, gender diversity. We're going to celebrate cultural diversity through Refugee Week. We've got Refugee Week here in Australia. So it's really marking things out where you can not only continue the journey and continue to improve, but celebrate now. So you've got to that 10 out of 10, but it's now, okay, well, how do we continually recognize and celebrate the diversity and the inclusion in our workplace? What's that going to look like? What sort of initiatives are we going to put in place? Having things like working groups and governance groups to make sure that we stay on track, and we do things like employee surveys quite regularly to make sure that we're getting that feedback from employees to understand that we're still, where we need to be. And also, I say, when it comes to recruiting and bringing new people into this new improved culture, hire for cultural fit. You can teach technical skills. That is my one piece of advice. Yeah. You've worked really hard on building this culture or rebuilding this culture. Now you know the personal attributes or leadership attributes, or a mixture of both, that you need. Really be mindful of that when you're recruiting for people, and see the red flags in the recruitment process when people say particular things. But I always say, you recruit for cultural fit, you can teach technical skills later. You can't teach adults behaviours. It's really hard when you talk about behaviour change when it comes to adults. So again, there's lots there.
Absolutely. No, it's good. Yeah. I like it because it's one of those, you've kind of given us the concentrated version, so we can listen to the episode multiple times. I listen back to episodes more than once, definitely, because I don't catch everything the first time, and there's stuff you want to chew on and kind of digest a bit more, and just pick certain bits out that you need at that point, which is really good. I think one of the dangers is we get to that level you're on about, we maybe win an award for being diverse and all the rest of it, and then it's like, done that, just carry on as normal. Now we don't kind of maintain what we were doing beforehand, or, as you say, start doing new initiatives. I like the picture you give of sort of 1 to 10. If you get to 10, like, you then go to 11, don't you, which is the next level up, but you start at 1. So it's like, once you're at 11, you then start initiatives or something that's going to take the company forward, raise the awareness even more, kind of reinforce what you've already built on the first layer, and then get more people involved. Like you say, don't dilute it by getting the wrong sorts of new recruits in that's going to take you backwards rather than forwards. Lots of wisdom there. Thank you for everything that you've shared. We are right near the end of the episode, but how can people sort of touch base with regards to elevated coaching if they want to find more about consultancy for sort of the diversity aspect, the inclusion aspect, or just have a bit more of a conversation based on what we've said? Best way for people to touch base with you?
Best way would be head on over to our website, which is elevatedconsulting.net. And there's a little form there if you want to have a discovery call with myself or one of my practitioners. Just fill that out and it pops into my inbox and we can make a time to have a chat further.
Brilliant. Okay. Yeah, that sounds really good. Very practical, very straightforward, which is what we like. No fluff. We know exactly what we need to do. If we're honest with ourselves and we raise our level of self-awareness, and getting the external input is also such a key thing, isn't it? We can be in an environment for so long, not realize a lot of the red flags, not realize a lot of what we're doing because we're in it. Whereas you get someone in from outside and they can just hit things straight away. You save so much time and money and all the rest of it. So that's really good. So keep up the good work, keep doing what you're doing and helping people like you are, certainly making the world a better place, which is what it's all about, isn't it?
It is, absolutely.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate, for those that don't know, Kylie got up very early this morning to do this recording. So we really appreciate that as well. And you're very sharp and very on the ball as well. So that's all good. Really appreciate your time. For everybody listening as well, don't let this be just another podcast that you listen to and then go on to something else. Go back over it, pick one or two things, ask yourself, book a session with yourself as well, and just ask yourself a few questions. Where am I actually doing well? Where am I not doing so well when it comes to diversity, inclusion, psychological safety, and who can I get to help me in the process of moving things forward? Certainly reach out to Kylie and her team, have a conversation, see what the next step is for you with that. Make sure you do something with this. Let the episode live in your company. Don't let it die and just be one of those things you skip on to the next thing and don't do anything about it, because that isn't going to help you. And that's not what we're here for either. So always encourage people to take action because we believe in you and we believe in your potential. Thank you for sharing your time with us today. Thanks for joining us, and we will catch you on the next episode. Bye for now.